Hi everyone, this is Wes Lawton. I am a grief counselor with Hospice of Michigan and I cover the Macomb County area. I'm one of the co-facilitators of the Men Overcoming Loss Grief Support Group for grieving men over the age of 18 who are working through grief after the loss of a loved one to death. So uh, this is a summary of our recent Men Overcoming Loss group, which took place on May 18th, 2021. And so I would like to just share this presentation with you, give you an overview of what we talked about and some of the stuff that the guys discussed afterward, um, so that you can be informed. Maybe some of the education will be helpful to you and you can get an idea of the kinds of things we talk about in this group on a regular basis. So let me go ahead and share my screen. 1 second to pull this up. There we go. I know my lighting isn't great, but I figured you'll be looking at the presentation for the most part anyway. So I talked about, and David and I talked about continuing bonds with the group. And so I will jump right in and you'll get a better idea of what that phrase means. I talked about some different conventional beliefs about what happens to us after we die and what happens to our loved ones after they die, more importantly, for the sake of this presentation. One idea is that we have a sort of essence of who we are, whether that's contained in a spirit, a soul, a being, a consciousness, whatever language you might use or how you might understand that, and that essence goes on, and that our body is a container for it while we're living, and after we die, then that goes on, whether it's through, going to heaven or um, lingering on some other plane here on Earth or being reincarnated. Of course, there are different concepts of what this looks like, but that covers most people's beliefs. And also, many people believe that this is it, and that um, our our sense of consciousness and our sense of essence is contained in our brain. And when our brains shut off when we die, then we're just gone. Um, and that can be a meaningful and beautiful belief as well. Um, And so I think that most people's beliefs are pretty much encompassed by one of those, or of course, those who say, I don't know. And that's a very fair way to look at it too. But continuing bonds is a way of understanding how we can relate to our loved ones and how we can think of them after they die that can complement either one of these kinds of beliefs, or wherever you might fall on that spectrum. Just know that it's not trying to replace that. Um, So here are some things that people often hear from friends and family who are usually well-meaning when they say it. So some things like move on, got to learn to let them go, leave the past in the past. And again, these are usually well-intentioned, but if you have lost somebody and you've heard one of these things, chances are you have found that it's not very helpful, and in some cases it's hurtful. Now, I will say the concept of letting go of the need for control, or I should say understanding that that we don't have control in many areas of life. That can be good. Living in the present, looking to the future, these can be good things. So I'm not saying that these are horrible things for anyone to say, or if it's helpful to you that there's anything wrong with that. But again, I'm sure I don't have to tell anybody who's lost a loved one that hearing these, taking them at face value, it doesn't work. And that's what I'm saying here, that trying to move on, trying to let them go. And I've heard, of course, grieving people say as well that this is what they're trying to do, and that's what they think that they are supposed to be doing. And it works for some people to see it that way. I want to say that this continuing bonds theory isn't going to be for everybody, maybe, but for most people, I have found that trying to do this, it's not a good or a bad thing. It just doesn't work. It's not realistic. Um, the fact is that these loved ones have had such a deep impact on us that it's impossible to completely separate ourselves from them. We find that letting them go and moving on, it's like trying to let go and get rid of a part of ourselves. And that's why I think I have people sharing that it's like when they died, a part of me died. It's because they've become a part of me with my interactions with them, my relationship with them. And so even though they're gone, they are still with me, and that's difficult. And if I'm supposed to let it go and move on, then um, I'm not sure how to make that work. So continuing bonds sort of embraces this instead of denying it. Our loved ones are a part of us forever. Continuing bonds is a more realistic way of relating to your loved one from this perspective. This concept, as you'll find, as I explained a little bit more, it's ancient. I can't really pinpoint exactly who the first person was to suggest it, but it's something that people have been doing for millennia, a way of thinking of our loved ones. Although I think the phrase came from this book that I have listed here. It was written in the mid-90s, so relatively new. And to put it simply, our relationships with our loved ones do not end when their lives do. And some of you, that might be like, well, obviously. And for others of you viewing this, it might be more like, how can I have a relationship with someone who's dead? That sounds kind of weird. That sounds impossible. And so I'm going to give a little bit more detail about this idea. And I talked about how a friend I remember told me about a book he was reading. And this is third or fourth hand information here, but and just about how the book used examples of Jesus and Martin Luther King Jr. and others who were killed for their beliefs and for the things that they were doing and saying, and about how, using the example of Martin Luther King Jr., they are more alive and present with us now than they ever were when they were walking around on the earth. And I found this concept to be compelling. And of course, with Jesus, many believe that he is risen. And so there's other ways of looking at that as well. But even if you were to set that aside, hypothetically, I mean, Jesus as a figure has made such an impact and continues to make such an impact on people's lives. And of course, you could probably put other religious figures in there as well, especially in different parts of the world. Many other examples too. But the idea is that this person is with us in a very real way, even though they're no longer walking around on earth. And so why not us? Why not our loved ones? When thinking about this idea, it helps to ask the question, who were they? And I'll go on to that second one in a second here about what makes you you. But if I were to ask you to tell me about your loved one, tell me what they were like, you wouldn't talk very much about their container, so to speak, as I said earlier, what their body was. You might say that she was very short or very tall, or about their hair color, their eye color, something like that. Of course, that might come up, but the focus I find tends to be on their personality, their quirks, their humor, stories with them, ways that they have made you who you are. When I ask about who was this person, that's the kind of stuff that comes up. That is sort of the answer to who were they and who are they to you now? And I think by the same token, it goes with what makes you you. And I hope that people's experience of me has a lot to do with my words, my actions, my presence that is felt beyond just seeing me and hearing me in our five senses, about memories that I make with people. And that's who I really am. And so when I die someday, as we all tend to do, I hope that I can live on with other people. So here are some ways that we can foster continuing bonds and continue to relate in a positive way to people who have died. Thinking of memories that we've made with them, sharing stories. And I love when people share stories of their deceased loved ones because they light up. And I really think that in that moment, they're feeling the presence of their loved one. They're feeling a closeness with them. Even though we know that they have died and have gone on or not, they're not with us in that way, and yet they are with us in this way of their essence and who they really are. living out the ways that they've made you you. And I meant to fix this slide because I made a little typo for the group as well, but they've made you you. So um, if you are heavily grieving somebody, I have no doubt that you wouldn't be the person you are today if it were not for them. So you can think about what are those things. Maybe they've made you more compassionate or patient. Maybe they have um, taught you some lessons, or you've picked up on their sense of humor, or fill in the blank. Maybe you were a parent with them. Um, there are countless possible examples. And so tapping into those things and making them a part of your life as you continue to live on, that's a way of keeping them as a part of your life as well, because you wouldn't have those aspects if not for them. Hobbies, activities, things that were important to them, things that you did together, you can continue on with these things or pick them up for the first time, perhaps, as a way of staying close to them in a positive, healthy way. You can volunteer or donate to important causes to them. Many people find that to be incredibly meaningful. They used to care about this thing, that was kind of their thing. And since they've died, I've continued the work. And I know they would be happy about that. And it feels good to me too, not just for helping others, but because I am continuing to relate to them, the one who died, and talking to them. And I brought up in the group how probably over half of the people I talk to who are grieving, if we've developed enough of a relationship for them to share this, they say that they continue to talk with their loved ones. And that number might surprise you. And I would say among those, over half of them think that they're the only one. They think that they're crazy for doing that. And so I just say that to normalize this and to say that basically everybody seems to find it helpful who does it. They don't say, I tried that and something bad happened and I got sadder. Although you might have moments of that, but overall it's a helpful thing. And not only does it help simply to talk to them and help you get to a place where your loss becomes more normal, and perhaps you don't find as much of a need to talk to them as time goes on, and there's nothing wrong with that. It might be part of your healing. Maybe you always will. There's nothing wrong with that either. So that can be helpful, but also you know them well enough to know sometimes what they would be saying to you, saying back to you, or saying to you in a given moment. What would he say if he could see me now? And in that way, they can continue to give you guidance, wisdom, perspective, even after they're gone, which is a pretty amazing thing. And I have something here that I wrote a while back that I read in the group. I'll read it now too. Thinking about our loved ones as being alive and being with us in a very real way can also inspire us to have life after their death. Talking about life after death, but it's our lives. If they were really, truly, completely gone, there would be no memories, no grieving, no difference. But if they are really here with us still, we must work through our grief and we must heal for them as well as for those who we can still see around us. Sometimes people tend to feel like living a life filled with joy is insulting to the memory of their loved ones because they're not here to enjoy it with me. But then if they are with us, then having joy in life is the ultimate honor to their memory. Because they loved you, then it's what they would want. And because they are with you, your joy is their joy. You don't need me to tell you, if you're grieving, that it's hard work. And if I've ever met with you, if I've interacted with you, you probably know that I believe that the only way out of the pain is to go through it. So I'm not minimizing at all here that there's a real loss and it's really difficult and painful. But you're not truly alone. You've got your loved ones who are alive. If you're part of our support group, you've got us as well. And you've got those who have gone on, and they are also with you on every step of the journey. I just really love this idea that our beloved people who we have lost, again, we can continue to relate to them and tap into who they are and who they were, and they can guide us through our grief over losing them. It's kind of a mind-blowing concept, I think, and again, very beautiful. So again, they really are gone. And I'm not disregarding that in any way. I've got to acknowledge that. but we can also acknowledge that they are still with us in a way. It's not a rational thing. They can't be gone and yet still with us. Of course, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 3, but it's what we experience, and it's a real thing as far as I'm concerned. And it can be helpful to understand it in that way. Again, they can guide us through our grief in a manner of speaking. And of course, that's rarely enough. It's good to have people who are actually physically around us or virtually around us who can also help walk with us through this. So I had some questions that I posed to the group, and I can let you read them here. And I will just share that the guys in our group, I think everybody spoke up at least once, and in some cases multiple times, and they shared memories, they shared stories, and we did get to sort of meet and know and experience the presence of their loved ones for moments in the group, and I think that's a great thing. It's really an honor, and it just really reinforced this idea. And I think that this really flies in the face of what many people do, which is they try to, again, let it go, leave it behind, move on, live my life, and just sort of try to almost forget about them. Don't talk about them because I'm afraid of what will come up. And that's not really healthy grieving. We need to talk about them. And ideally, we need to find ways to stay close to them. Some people talked about rituals that they do, and it's not anything weird necessarily as a ritual. I'm talking about just memorial services. That's a ritual. About gardening, that can be a ritual. It is, I forget, there's an actual definition of a ritual that I really like. I don't have it here with me, but it's basically anything that you do that has a meaning attached to it, and you do it intentionally. Perhaps you do it regularly. And so you could think about many things that we do. Again, kissing their picture before you go to bed. I've talked to people who do that and find that to be a helpful ritual. So it can be very simple. It can be very unique, but some of the guys shared those things. And basically what I found through hearing from the guys, and it was so cool to see them supporting one another and saying, what do you guys think about this? And people would chime in, and some guys had some very really effective and wonderful ways of continuing to relate to their loved one. And they all found that it was helpful. Again, really validating this. And so, again, this isn't anything new. Most of you who are watching this have probably thought about this and even practiced this in some way, but I think it's kind of a neat way of expressing that, putting to words what we already know, some of us, that we do continue to relate to our loved ones. In doing so, it just sort of is the way that it is. It's the realistic way to look at it, and so grieving in a healthy way embraces that and incorporates that. So I don't have an extra slide here for you, so let me stop sharing this screen. But I do, as always, want to encourage you to consider joining us virtually. We meet every other, well, not every other Tuesday, but the first and third Tuesdays of each month. So our next group is coming up pretty quickly here, right on June 1st. And that starts at 6 at both of those times. The first group of the month is always a little bit more support oriented. It's less structured. The guys get together and they share what they're going through right now and what their challenges are, and they support one another and they listen, and it helps to tell stories, again, giving advice. I mean, these kinds of things, just guys getting together and being there for each other and understanding that the others in the group are going through something similar, and they understand more than most do. And then the third and that one goes from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And then the third Tuesday of the month, that one is more education focused. That's what this one is. And so for a little over the first half, 30, 40 minutes or so, about 40 minutes mostly, we do a presentation like this and present a new idea or an old idea, or talk about something that specifically relates to men in some cases. And in this case, it was something that I think relates to everybody, although we were able to apply it specifically to the men in the group. And then we have some time of discussion, and how does this apply to you, and what are your thoughts? And that's always just as much, in my opinion, if not more, important of a time and helpful of a time for the guys. And so we always make sure to make time for that whenever we can. Also want to let you know that we have some events coming up, and this is the first time we've been able to do something like this in this group or in any ongoing group that I'm aware of. And, I've only been here about 2.5 years with this organization, but it's very exciting. It's coming up on June 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. And there are some sort of mini retreats. I'm not even sure if they're long enough to call them retreats. We're looking at a few hours or so. But just getting together, having a bonfire, sharing some food. We'll be outside, we'll be socially distanced. Masks are welcome, not necessarily required. Uh, Although again, distancing is encouraged as well. And again, being in the open air and those things, research tells us help seriously minimize any risk of virus transmission or anything like that. And we know that many of us are getting vaccinated as well, and that helps too. And so we feel safe to do it, and we've been approved to do it. And so again, we've got 3 days here, and it's not one event over 3 days. That really would be a retreat, and I'd love to be able to make that happen. But for now, it's 3 different events, really the same event in 3 locations because we're all over the state. And so one is in the north, and one is in the west, and one is in the, I should say, southwest, and one is in the southeast. And I don't have all that information in front of me. In fact, I know some of the details are still being ironed out, but I think that we are looking at 6 p.m. for those groups, if just to get an idea of, clearing your schedule if that's something that you'd like to participate in. So anyway, sharing a meal over a fire, talking. We'll have a little bit of discussion that is just a little bit structured, maybe do an activity or something, but for the most part, just being together. And, that in itself, as we know these days, is a treasure. And sharing and supporting in similar ways that we do in our virtual group on a regular basis. So we're super excited about that. And if you want more information, we'll be sending it out shortly, I expect within the next couple of weeks or so. And so I'll just give you my email address and my phone number for work here. W Lawton, that's WLAWTON. You may or may not have seen my name in the Zoom window. I'm not sure as I was sharing my screen. My name is Wes Lawton, and that's at HOM.org. HOM for Hospice of Michigan. WLawton@HOM.org. My number is 586-263-8514. You can also go to our website, HOM.org, and click Grief Support up at the top and navigate from there to find out about our group. And you've got the contact info for the other facilitators there as well. And just get in touch with us. Let us know that you'd like to get on our email list. We just send out reminders and links and, only the essentials. We don't bombard your inbox. And that way you can get the update about the group. And you can also, I should say, about the sort of retreat event, and also info about the group, which I encourage you to join if you haven't yet. Give it a try. Okay, that's all that I've got. Everybody, be well, and thanks for watching. Please feel free to share. We want to get the word out there about this group. A lot of guys are being helped by it, and we'd love to have it continue to grow as it has been. And I would say even more important than the number of guys showing up, we have guys who it's making a difference in their lives. And so, of course, as a facilitator, that's a wonderful and humbling thing. And it's why we do this. So we want to get the word out. So again, thanks for your time. Thanks for watching. And I hope the rest of your day goes well.